Chickadee China, the Chinese chicken. You have a drumstick in your brain, stop sticking. Watch your next files with no lights on. We're on the bass on.
Shut up.
Still commands at this one.
No, shut up.
It's been...
Hello! Sonic City Council is now in session. Thank you once again for inviting us into your headphones, your car, your home, your mind, wherever you're listening. We appreciate you. And I call this round table to order. Snarf! Nice flam, sir. Well-deserved flam.
Yeah. Getting in that grease now.
Yes. So, I've gathered this league of extraordinary listeners today to talk about a very important subject in the world of music. I don't know if you can guess what it is. But it would be listening today.
What?
I want to get all those out of the way before we start.
Say again.
Yeah. Huh? Yeah.
What?
Did
I
you?
think it's going to be what we call a running bit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's
I fear.
well, that's why I sent you the Norm Macdonald, huh?
Huh?
All the compilations of every time someone's been
I only
talking to
got
him.
through 2 of those, and I was like, I'm done with that.
Yeah, that's all you need. You get the point. I'll
Something
write
about
out.
Norm Macdonald.
Oh,
what?
Yeah.
See, that's the what.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That
It is okay.
It is very much okay. So
We're all right.
We're all all
we're
right.
all right.
It's good now.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
He handed the volleyball back to me, and then I just let it hit the sand. But that's all
fine.
right.
Yes, and we can pick
Yes. So I had come up with a theme for this week because I had written a weekly column that, I do that every week, as you do, writing stuff, typing things for a newspaper. And the theme that I came up with for that particular week was we had gotten into a discussion about musical listening and about how we thought at one point we knew what it meant to listen to everybody in a band setting. To
It ended with some bruises.
it did. I was gonna say it got a little hairy.
Where?
Well, I don't know. David, where did you?
Where are these hairy bruises?
Yeah.
Test flight.
Yeah.
John's ass whoopings.
Yeah.
Verbally.
Thank you.
Oh.
So in college we sort of
Hairy bruises.
the best way I could describe it
One
is
Direction
yeah. The best way I could describe it is it was that scene from The Matrix where he thinks he's working in an office and he understands what the world is, and then he gets the plug pulled, and after he takes the red pill or the blue pill, red pill. That's what the pill it was. But
I love this movie recap. But Jesse.
yeah, but I equate it to that where I had an understanding of what I thought playing in a band and learning songs was, and creating that whole chemistry and vibe, and then I quickly realized, that's not how you do it at all.
I
It's
know nothing.
There is a whole list of knowledge and information that I didn't even know existed, and a whole bunch of techniques and all of that stuff. And I know everybody, I think, probably went through that in their own way, so I kind of wanted to get everybody's perspective on listening and band life.
Shoot, I'll go first.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The specific moment that I realized my ears were not what I thought they were. We were playing "Money" by Pink Floyd.
Never
in
heard of it.
Test flight, and I felt like I was
a band in the 70s.
I felt like I was holding it down. I was grooving, what I thought was grooving in 7. Everyone's bobbing their heads, everyone's feeling. I see John from the other side of the classroom just sitting here doing his thing, just grooving. I thought, man, hell yeah, I'm really sinking into this whole playing with the band thing and grooving and listening. We got finished with the song and he went, Dave, not grooving. And everything just, huh?
Yeah.
And it's not that it sounded bad. It was just I just didn't understand how somebody could just bob their head and it just still wasn't grooving. But when I actually heard recordings back, it was oh, that's what that is. Playing in my own isolated little bubble of playing the drums and not actually playing the music. And I feel like that's where a lot of people's disconnect ends up getting with their instruments in general, is they get really proficient at playing their instrument, but not at actually communicating on stage with other people. But it's not that you even need to be playing with other people to develop those skills, but even just playing by yourself, really listening to what's going on in the song that you're practicing to or learning, or really picking out those details. Just a whole different world. Whole
A
different.
whole new world. No takers. All right.
No,
Cool.
I was,
That's
No,
good
you get-
stuff,
you get
Todd.
nothing.
yeah, I was searching for the lyric. and
Fuck
it-
you guys.
Yeah,
No, you just get out.
yeah.
I mean, it was weak.
Okay, Matt, was there a
was
moment
it
like
round
that
table
for you, or was it a gradual sort of moment over time?
Clockwise fashion.
Duck what? Duck.
Definitely more gradual, because I think for me the thing about listening always was that I was one of those people who's really guilty when I was younger of basically not listening
Yeah.
at all, because just the act of trying to play the parts that I had prepared in my younger years kind of took precedence
Yes.
over everything.
Yeah.
And to a degree, that really served me well, because it was something that seemed to work well. People responded well to it. I was playing with other musicians, and it didn't seem to be as much of an issue. Maybe because I put so much focus on really nailing parts and the execution that kind of, in a situation like that where you're playing more prepared music,
Right.
you can get away with that a lot more. Definitely when I went to school, college with John and then Llama afterward, yeah, like listening was the thing that we all got reamed the most for.
Right.
And understandably, because listening is something that you really deep, like active listening.
Yeah.
I feel is a skill you have to earn. I don't think most people
Oh, yeah.
inherently have that.
Yeah.
Some people do, but I think it really is a skill that you develop, and I think it comes with developing a certain amount of facility and control
Yeah.
on your instrument. When you can get to the point that, you know, certain things, important things though, can really start to go on autopilot, and there's more mental CPU headroom available. Like when you can get to the point that the things that you're playing, no matter how demanding they are, you know, really autonomous.
Right.
And can be accessed very quickly. That's the point at which you can really listen and respond
Yep.
too, because some people get to the point that they can really listen, but they haven't gotten to the point that they can actively take part in
Right.
a conversation yet. And I feel like that's a stage that every musician kind of has to go through. And at a certain point, listening definitely has to take priority,
Yeah. I would say that's like
especially in any any situation in which you're playing improvised music.
yeah.
Definitely. And I think that's the trap that a lot of people fall into, is that improvisatory music has been a little bit sidelined
Oh yeah.
in the last few decades. And so it's really easy to grow up as a player in this mindset of what is essentially prepared music,
Right.
right? You learn your part, and the idea is you need to execute it as well as physically possible.
Right.
And if you're only ever playing in that situation, the thing is, you can really get away with that.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I'd say the majority of the bands in the world are just getting away with that. If you're proficient enough at your instrument, if you're tight enough and you're just playing the parts at the exact same time as each other, your bass part just corresponds with the drum part that is written, that corresponds with the keyboard part that is written. Most people aren't going to be able to tell that you're really not listening to each other if it's just the parts happening on top of each other at the same time
Yeah.
and not as one actual cohesive piece of song coming at you.
Well, if anything, I think being in a prepared music situation can actually be a detriment in that way, because it's so
used to it.
often the case where people play their hits.
Yeah.
You know, the music that people expect them to play, and over the course of years and years and years,
Decades.
the idea that you're going to be able to stay completely present in that music, especially if it's something that's relatively on rails. You know, you've got electronics and tracks and things
Oh,
that
yeah.
need to be strictly adhered to, then I think that listening aspect tends to be a little more diverted towards those things. But at a certain point, when it all becomes more facile, then the problem is not listening because everything is so easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, since
Did I throw you off
I
your game?
was gonna say since Davey's emitting pleasurable moans at the moment, I want to hear.
Words like facile just excites me.
Yeah, I'll pass it
I
over
don't
to
mind
you.
saying it in public. Yeah.
Well, so
Say what? What?
Well, no, I just huh?
What?
Yeah. What? Who? No, with what we're talking about, I'm curious because you always have such an individual perspective on things. I'd be curious what your take on your own listening and journey has been from, when you started playing to now, but also like your perspective on that in general when it comes to bands and music.
I think I would just like to try to share like my most like the thing that's the most common point of like that's shared with the experience that like Hod and Matt are talking about. So it's like for me it always came around like improvising music also, which I felt like because I've been doing since I was like a lad, I felt like after a certain amount of time, a certain amount of situations, I feel like I was facile, there was facility.
Yeah.
But then something occurred, and it wasn't that, I don't want to say how recent it was, but it was recent enough to, like, while I was still in school this last year finishing my degree, I had to recontextualize a lot because I went back to studying classical guitar hard. But in something like a jam session we actually had here, I had a really formative moment where I realized, like, I tend to push an idea really hard in jam sessions. I tend to be like, while everybody's still setting up, I'll be like, oh, like, I gotta, because it's like part of the thing I like to do is I like to mess around and come up with ideas. So I'm like, if a riff piques somebody's interest, then we can get down. But then I realized that sometimes people are playing and I feel like they don't know how to respond to it. And the reason why is because I've given them no room, in a sense, to respond to it. It's almost like I've set a certain tone for the dialogue. It's like you come in a room at a party and everybody's already like real hype and kind of getting like aggro. And you'd be into it if you were there with them from the start, but you feel like you missed something. And they look at you like, yeah! And you're just like, this like, wait, I just got here. Let me fucking press.
Yeah, sure.
So I felt like that guy. I felt like that aggro situation that needed to be resolved. So what I do now is like, I made it a point with every gig, anytime somebody's noodling, even if it's like, when you guys play on drums or something, I'm trying to copy the rhythm of that lick, or I'm going to play exactly what they played. I do it in every rehearsal. Like when I go do the cover band with my older friends, I'm like, we do a rehearsal like once every other week.
Yeah.
And every time somebody's just like, I'm like, or like trying to fucking do that. Because then when I take it to a more open improvisation, my hope is that will have given me little responses to, like, again, be autonomous now in listening and participating. Because I feel like overall it was a sensibility change for me.
Yeah.
More than anything else.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and I can say on my end of things, I always appreciate it when I'd rather have somebody just push an idea than just not suggest anything at all, because then with how my brain works, I can respond to that as opposed to just always leading the charge on that. I like to have a back and forth where I might come up with something and then somebody else comes up with something.
Yeah.
So I've been in a lot of jam situations where people aren't used to that, and whether it's the listening part or it's just feeling nervous and like being put on the spot, then it's like you're feeling like
You feel nervous in a jam?
I don't, but I've been around people that are, or it's their kind of first time or like one of their first times at one of those type of situations, and so then I'm kind of like, hey, come on, guys, and like trying to rally everybody instead of everybody contributing at the same time.
That dad energy.
Yeah, and you kind of have to be. And so, I don't know, I'd rather
That's
have, and again, it's like, you're somebody that if I throw something out there, I know that you're going to be listening to what I'm doing. Like, you're not so hell-bent on I have to get my idea out there that I'm just going to, yeah, but hold on, let me just, let me just play this real
that's
quick.
reassuring. That's nice to hear.
Maxwell?
Is it my turn?
Yes.
You've waited so patiently. You've earned a couple points. You could buy a cool bookmark.
Oh, man. How cool of a bookmark, though.
I don't know. Go to songercitystore.com, bitch. I called you bitch.
.com, bitch?
Yeah.
You gotta put the whole...
.com, bitch.
No.
It's the domain.
Yeah.
I'm so out right now.
That's fine.
There's real cappy in here.
Oh, jeez.
I don't know. So, like Matt and I have discussed numerous times, we're kind of like solar opposites.
streaming
We
on
gotta,
Hulu.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hulu.
They don't pay us. We just like the show.
No,
Yeah,
because I
exactly.
love it.
No, like we're like complete opposites when it came to
When it came to.
Shut up. Stop interrupting me. I will get a complete sentence out at some point. When it came to how we learn music and how we hear music and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
I would say I was very much like completely open and listening all the time.
Yeah.
And it might have been detrimental for a while until because I was listening without like really learning
Oh, okay.
music
Yeah.
at all. I mean, even my parents would tell me that I would like hum out bass lines when listening to the radio in the car and
Yeah.
things like that. And when I was learning classical percussion, I would always memorize the music instead of reading, not understanding what I was doing. I started playing jazz. It's the same thing. Like I didn't understand why notes worked. They just sounded cool to me.
Right.
So I don't know. But like Matt was saying, the autopilot of it is when I started really understanding. So playing drums and jazz when my left foot, when I stopped hearing that, was when I was, that took away like half of my processing power.
Yeah.
And I could, focus that on other things. So instead of just doing simple things and, having to think of, closing that hi-hat in 2 and 4, I could now actually listen to what everyone else was doing and playing off of that and comping and things like that.
You mean in terms of like using your left hand or left foot more in like an interactive function rather than strictly timekeeping?
No, I mean like my left hand and my right hand more. Because that is constant and I don't have to think about it anymore.
Gotcha. Right. And that's one of the hardest things about learning to play jazz for drummers is getting that particular ability.
Right.
And then really at that point, once you can do that really well, it becomes about not doing that so much anymore.
Right.
And that becomes another voice that is also taking part in that conversation.
Well, and that's the key word of it, is it's a conversation. And even if I'm playing a prepared piece of music, it's still a conversation. Because even if the sentences don't change, the tone of voice is changing,
This feels like one of those places where one of your classic analogies would be slid in here.
see, you're
feels
catching
like
on quite quickly.
feels like it'd be more like a speech because
I mean,
of the preparation. let's
You
say.
can't make a fire hydrant without baking a couple pizzas.
And that one gets me here
Yeah.
in the chest region where hearts are,
Yeah.
and here in the thing where
More-
in the hard thing,
more
where
in the
the brain
migraine
dart.
part of your brain.
Yeah, where it hurts
Yeah.
all the time. Yeah, both
Can't
places.
spell listen without knit.
Too true, bro. Too true.
Yeah, exactly.
Hot diggity.
But it's true though, and so with actually, thankfully, just playing a gig recently with filling in for
Hey.
the illustrious Mr. Sipes
got
on
really
bass.
close there.
I did, yeah.
Yes.
I was gonna say, don't worry, it'll all be over soon.
He's snipping it off already.
It's okay.
How could you say that? He's very young. He's a young man.
Yeah,
Won't be
citizens who don't know, just as a quick aside, sometimes David breaks down in fits of laughter, and you just kind of have to wait for the system to reset, and then he'll come back online
It's worth
eventually.
it. It's
What, the tone of voice or my?
fucking fire.
Yeah, that was the point.
Super bad.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought it was
I'm like
bad
Danny
because
DeVito. I'm the trash man. That's my character. I throw trash all over the ring. It's my lane, and I'm sticking to it.
Welcome back to Jesse and Hunter's podcast.
Yeah, no kidding.
Podcast.
But
I don't know if you're are you finished. I don't know if you're finished with your music yet.
I'm finished in more ways than one. But yes, go ahead.
I was just gonna say like it's
I'm uncomfortable.
like Matt also said, it's been like a gradual process.
Yeah.
The whole thing. I think it is for everybody.
Same.
But like Davey, I had a recent kind of
Come to Jesus?
Kinda, maybe.
Come
I don't know if it was,
Moses.
I wouldn't call it a revelation or anything like that because it wasn't so mind blowing because I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
But I've got a gig coming up where I have to play solo piano,
Oh, right.
classical stuff, which I've never done and I don't have the skill for it.
You do though.
I mean, no, I
Yeah.
don't. You don't know because I've never done it.
I like to assume things though. I assume you've got this, bro.
Good on you.
But I've been
do it.
I've been also practicing solo jazz stuff, and the amount of listening that I have to do to myself is kind of staggering.
Oh no, I understand. Dude, it's, like learning a song is like I don't even consider it's like one in the bank till I like listen, played it along with the sheet music like 50, 60, 100 times. If it's a hard song, like 200, 300, 400 times. I think I probably played Sir Duke like 800 times. Now I just do it for the fuck of it because I got it down, but I have played it like 800 times. So
Is that only?
is that kind of part of what you mean, like the listening?
Kinda, and also just, well, yeah. I mean, part of the listening is, making sure you're in time with yourself, because I got to play with two hands and I'm accompanying myself, so it's 10
You're always
fingers. It's
holding
10
them up.
fingers, and they all have to work with each other.
True.
I don't have to just worry about, a chord working with another band. It's like, oh, this
Right.
has to be a cohesive song that I'm doing by myself.
Yep.
And it's not just a simple pop song. I have to do melody and chords and the whole thing. So
Yeah.
it's it's rhythmic, it's harmonic. It's also when it's jazz, since it's just chord progressions and melody. Nothing's really written out in how you play the chords. So you have
True.
to be like,
You're comping.
yeah, what sounds better? How does it move easier and still sound well? Because I want, you don't want your left hand to get too low. Sounds
No,
muddy.
it gets muddy.
You don't want it to be too high. It gets in the way of the melody.
Yep.
Things like that. It's just
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
it's half skill
Yeah.
and it's half listening. to
Right.
Make sure it,
Well, I would say
Is listening a
that
skill?
there's-
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
It is a practiced skill.
Yeah.
I mean, I would even go as far to say that you could say that there's a resolution to people's hearing ability in the same way that there's an amount of fidelity to television sets. People have a certain amount of fidelity at which they hear things, a certain resolution to which they can discern certain things. And, there's a lot of things that can obscure that. Like a lot of drum set students, for example, when they're young, have a really hard time discerning the different instruments of the kit.
Yeah.
Even though they're right there available to them, they can literally sound them out and listen to the recording. It's just, there is so much.
doesn't help that a lot of drummers
Yeah.
tune their kit for everything to sound
Exactly.
exactly the same.
And it,
Yeah.
it also doesn't help that there are a lot of songs that simply use, percussive drum set role fulfilling type sounds that
Yeah.
don't exist on the drum set.
Right.
So that's something that you have to teach kids too is, well, if you don't have a sampler pad to emulate those sounds, you have to go through the process of discovering all of the different sonorities of the drum set. And you have to figure out, okay, what's the sound that you can get on the drum set that sounds most like a hand clap or a finger snap? Or if you don't have a cowbell, what's the thing on your drum that you can get to
Well,
sound
you're gonna
most
need
like
more.
a cowbell?
That's candy.
Yeah.
But it's also the, being able to listen to things in layers.
Yeah.
As well. It's the same thing that people deal with when trying to develop your ears to hear harmony more deeply. Right? There's a certain degree to which you can hear things, but maybe there's a layer in a song that you have been familiar with your entire life, and it's not until years later that all of a sudden you hear something
There
you
you go.
didn't
what
hear
the
before.
fuck?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
WTF.
I know that is fun, but also it's really humbling, especially when you feel like you're at a point where your ears are like pretty on. That even then, still like years later, you go back and you go, "Oh wow, I'd never caught that before." To me, I personally find that humbling because I already felt like my ears were at a good point a few years ago, and I felt like I was already catching all the little details. But here I am, only 3-4 years later and I'm catching even more, then I just have to think like, okay, well, if I'm being honest with myself, there's probably going to be some shit that I'm going to hear in 3 or 4 years from now
Yeah.
that I'm going to go, oh wow, I didn't even hear that then, and I felt that my ears were pretty good even then. Like it shouldn't end. I don't think.
Sometimes it's interesting too because it's not so much a matter that people can't hear something. Sometimes they're hearing it, but they're not discerning.
Yeah,
what
to
it is.
actually
Yeah.
like make those
There's-
pathways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a point at which, you reach where you can start to hear things within what's going on. And to me, like, when I think about listening, I think anybody that gets to the point, a lot of people go through this in college, when you learn to transcribe music, that really opens up your listening world quite a lot because
Yeah.
there's the thing that you get from digesting a piece of music that somebody played and getting it on paper is you can start to understand their intent in a different way.
Yeah.
It's not to say that you can't listen to a piece of music and feel or discern intent from what somebody plays.
No.
But you can start to like visually see how these things organize themselves.
Yeah.
And they literally do take on like an artistic representation when you get them on paper. You can see there's certain ebbs and flows to things, peaks and valleys.
Waves and troughs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can start to recognize patterns too, because if you think about note movement, there's really only 3 ways that you can move a melody. You
Right.
can move up in pitch, you can move along the same pitch, or you can move down in pitch, and you can start to literally see those things playing out on paper. There are trajectories that certain feelings and melodies and harmonies
Right.
that create.
And all the things that are coupled with that too. So
Yeah.
rhythmic changes and feel and all that.
Well,
sort
when
of
it's
thing.
really useful is when that starts to be something that you see in your head. As you're
Right.
playing a piece of music, you can literally see this picture being painted in your mind. Not so much you're seeing the actual notes and notation. It's that you can start to see the arc of things.
Yeah, you got a picture of it. But I would break that down. The way I look at it is that hearing and listening, to me, not necessarily by technical definition, are 2 different things. And I would describe hearing.
Oh,
as,
absolutely.
Yeah, hearing is a function of the ear with how that works and like how sound hits your ear and how it and just for layman's explanation, hits your ear and gets sent to your brain. It's like
Who's layman?
I was gonna say he's
that
a guy
your
who doesn't
lawyer?
know a lot about stuff, but that's not important right now.
Okay.
But like, yeah, if,
Bragging on a dude who's not here, that's cold.
yeah, I know, cold-blooded.
I know how you roll.
Yeah,
Poor guy can't defend himself.
Yeah, really.
no, doesn't know how.
Davidson's a butcher, man.
Hold on 1 second.
7.
Yeah.
What was it? I forgot. Oh,
right,
yeah. Max
continue.
Taylor, Foley artist.
That's for the listening audience.
That was, I was gonna say. You're welcome. Yeah, I was gonna say that was a Golden Road moment.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
Whatever.
can I pose a thought to you?
Can we
guys?
cancel
Yes.
him for being too corny? Is that a thing yet?
Never.
I'm gonna fine him.
Stop
Owe
me.
money.
Okay, I can't.
Something that I hear a lot that I find to be a little synonymous is people talking about, the idea of hearing versus listening.
Yeah.
And then I see that as being synonymous with passive listening versus active listening.
Yeah, and I would say that, but I would even say take it a step farther than that.
requires an
Hearing
eyeball.
is literally just the physical function of like how you hear sound and how you perceive sound consciously. Yeah, so
Hear songs all the time.
but then once you get to the point of listening, then there is passive listening and then active listening. In the sense
Right.
of both of those things, especially active, is, and I wrote about this in that column. It's to me, it's where all of the best parts of humanity. Talking with your hands.
Finger lock.
It's where the best parts of humanity all meet into one place. So it's
Meat bags.
critical thinking, it's compassion, it's empathy. Because
Communication.
if you think that you're better than everybody, you're not going to be a great listener.
Why are you looking at me in the eyes?
Oh, the guy that keeps interrupting people.
I'm contributing.
Yeah.
I'm a bookend, you guys.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's all of those aspects of humanity that I think are when people are at their best. It's when they're listening, and yeah, it's empathy, it's critical thinking, all sorts of things. It's being open-minded, and not immediately like you hear an idea halfway through and you go, oh, I know how to respond to this.
Yeah.
It's like it's you taking the whole picture of it and you take a second to consider it and then you respond. And that's where the conversation part of it comes in.
Think about the regular conversation. Most people, when they have a regular conversation, aren't really listening to what's being said. They're
That's
waiting
great,
to
but let me
respond.
take my point and let me
Yeah.
like.
You're wrong. I'll tell you why. No,
I
it's
just
too
wanted to
true. But
interrupt
the
you.
funny thing is, like,
Well, you're here now, Max.
We're gonna get intimate.
let's just admit things got sexual just now and keep moving
I
forward.
don't really think you're
Oh, never mind.
listening to me
Yeah,
when I say that music is a form of conversation.
it is a conversation.
Yeah. Are we having one right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody likes being interrupted, Max.
I know.
So why should we, as musicians, keep interrupting each other on stage? If a bassist is holding down doom, 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 why would a drummer
like the
That's the equivalent of. Go ahead and say something, Jesse.
I'm just
Shut
lost.
the fuck up. That's what that feels like on stage sometimes.
Sorry, I was just lost in your eyes.
You weren't even looking at my eyes.
No, I was looking at the lava lamp.
That's it. Really, like when people do that type of shit and they're not listening on stage, it's almost like the musical or like human conversation equivalent of just like somebody just steamrolling you
Oh,
while you're in
God.
the middle of a conversation.
Yeah.
Like we don't we consider that extremely rude, obviously, as people, but it happens all the fucking time with musicians
the
on
time.
stage. And you just don't know it because, like, well, I'm not using my mouth. I'm just doing this. I'm doing this.
And
But
then if you bring it up, then I feel like you're always an asshole because it's like, well, you just aren't listening to anybody playing right now.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, what, do you have some god tier ear? And it's like, no, I just can tell when you're playing the part and you're in your own bubble versus like engaged with the 4 other people that are in this. Like whatever the configuration
Yeah, it
is.
doesn't
It's
matter.
like doesn't matter. It could be a huge ensemble. It could be like a big bad voodoo daddy swing band, or it could be a power
One-on-one.
trio. Yeah,
Doesn't matter.
or it could be one-on-one. It doesn't matter. It's literally any configuration of musicians. I feel like I can feel when somebody's just in their head and not listening. Whether that's and most of the time I don't think it's malicious. Most of the time I think it's people really nervous and afraid to screw up,
I
which
don't
is
even think it's nervous and afraid. I think it's just when we're talking about something that like we're into or passionate about, we just have that natural tendency to just like, I want to say my thing that I know
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
And it's just I cannot wait for you to stop talking so that I can begin talking.
Right.
And not. I'm actually gonna like listen to whatever you have to say because I already know what I'm gonna say. I already know the point that I'm gonna make, but I want to elevate the thing that you're gonna finish on and not just come in there and.
Whoa.
I think a lot of people also
Patty
have the
cake.
fear that if they don't get out what they're hearing in that exact moment, that they'll lose it.
I
Yeah.
mean that. I think that does happen to a lot of
that's,
people though.
That's absolutely. I think you're really onto something because I know that's something I identify with in terms of like conversation stuff. Something I think I inherited from my mom was like social anxiety to the point where it's like I always steamroll people and watch her steamroll people because it was like there was a genuine anxiety that I couldn't honestly control my shirts from memory, and I would forget what I wanted to
Yeah.
say. And then I was like, I just did some inventory as I got sober, and I was just like, there's a lot of ego involved in worrying about whether you're going to forget what you're thinking about.
Right.
I was like, furthermore, you're missing a chance to like learn something real quick because other people, there's a lot of people out there who are way less in their own head than me, who are way more considerate than me, and have way more to offer people than I do, and I need to listen and be aware. And so that was something that was kind of a process in my early 30s.
yeah.
Now I'm indifferent at the sunset of my 30s.
Yeah.
Cold and indifferent.
No, I don't give a fuck.
Cold. So cold.
Yeah.
It's so dark.
Yeah. No, it's
Divorce, dude.
well, and you're definitely
like writing a Ween song over here, man.
Fat Lenny.
Yeah.
I listened to that after one of our last podcasts that we did.
You would,
Yeah.
Did you actively listen to it?
I
Yeah,
actively
did you
listened to
actually
it.
listen to it? Good point.
Yeah. It was even
You
though it was
know-
just 2 notes, there was a lot of there's a lot to absorb with those 2 notes.
The thing I want to say real quick about the point y'all were just making is that it doesn't bother me as much in everyday conversation because none of that stuff really like matters. Like I am okay with like I could be having a meaningful conversation in the workplace with somebody and then realize that they checked out and they're talking over me and I'm just like a lot of it comes down to like I'm trying to be as like self-effacing as possible about being like no matter how I feel inside, I know that I present as like a white dude who's like kind of taking an authority stance, and I'm like, and I don't want to be like the guy who's like, oh yeah, well let me break it down real quick. Like
It's a suit coat.
no, this is fucking fresh. I mean, it happens. It's less about what I wear than the fact that like my energy is thus that it's like I do want to contribute. I'm passionate about everything I'm involved in, but I'm also worried that like most people are way more about the surface aspects, and they get trapped in that in conversation or however you want to say it. Like that factors into their sense of the conversation more than mine. I'm driven by the details within. Because I can barely focus on the exteriors of anything. There's too many details and I start to panic. I'm definitely not able to deal with that kind of stuff long term.
Sure.
So I have to focus. Like most of the time when people are talking, I'm like, it's much more comfortable, like look away. But I had to train myself out of that because people were always like, you're never listening. And I was like I had to tell the old lady, hey boss, you know, I'm listening. I can recite what you said when I'm not looking you in the eyes.
Right.
When I look you in the eyes, I can't even hear what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah, that's.
But that's part of that listening thing.
I feel like that's most people though.
Oh yeah.
I don't think that most people don't make direct eye contact out of like, you know, fear or embarrassment or that's just uncomfortable. I mean, making eye contact with somebody the entire time that you're speaking is sometimes kind of creepy, but it doesn't necessarily mean that.
You guys are officially at second base.
Yeah.
That's true.
I was gonna say. Get Berlin, Take My Breath Away queued up just in case we need to bust that out.
Yeah, I think most times that I'm like really, really deeply listening, I'm not really making eye contact because I'm just really taking in all that information. And I don't know where that comes from or why necessarily. I don't know, Matt, you're more the brain guy.
Well,
Hey, tell me what's going on in here, huh?
you know, that's really funny that you bring up that point because I had a particularly great teacher when I was in college by the name of Aron Sarfati. And it was something that drove him absolutely nuts to see a drummer on stage either not looking at the band or with their eyes closed because you can tell that they're either putting all of their attention on listening really hard or they're putting all of their attention on what they're doing and trying to not fall apart. Because in that particular class, that really challenged everybody on every level. It was our Afro-Cuban and Brazilian drumming classes. So
Nice.
being that, you know, most of these people were not from Brazil, not only is it an unfamiliar playing vocabulary that you're trying to get into, the idiom of the music itself is unfamiliar.
Right.
So you're really in a situation where you're being challenged to be utterly out of your depth in every way. And so what he used to always tell us is that there's no information on the ceiling. There's no information on the floor to the left of your hi-hat. So he would always say, wherever your eyes go, your focus goes.
That's right.
Yeah.
And he would tell us all the time that half of the challenge of locking in with the players you play with is looking at them.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
if you're ever in a situation where you can't hear properly or there's not enough auditory information for you to lock in with somebody, just look at them.
Yeah.
You know, most of your, cognitive resources are dedicated to vision.
Yeah.
Like, we're primarily a visual animal. And so I think people really pick up on that in sometimes a conscious way and sometimes an unconscious way, that they can tell that, you know, people are mostly visual. So if you're talking to them or they're talking to you and you're not looking at them, people tend to take that as a cue that you're not really listening to them.
Right.
And it's understandable why people do that, because very often it seems to be the case when people are not looking at you. They're generally not listening to you.
Generally not.
Yeah.
No, they're objectifying you.
But I always thought that was such a useful thing that I
Yeah.
picked from that class. Wherever your
100%.
eyes go, your focus goes.
Yeah, well, and you learn that if you really get into live performing and
Yep.
you're doing like,
Especially
when-
if your mixes are not up to greatness.
yeah, well,
That's a
yeah,
technical term.
yeah.
I ain't saying nothing. I'm just saying.
He's out of your shitty.
Diplomatic, dude.
I'm just saying. There's most gigs I can't hear shit.
I've heard some shit in my time, but this is yeah. No, it's
Most times, if I'm playing a gig with Max, if I want to hear Max, I have to look at his fucking hands. If I look at his hands, like what he's playing, actually, like it fills it out. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, it's so
that
weird
makes
how
sense.
the brain can do that, huh?
oh yeah, no, that was
It's like lip reading.
yeah,
Yeah.
the one time we were filming a promo video for our
No
cover
promo.
band in the desert,
shit, yeah.
and there was a sort of drifter hitchhiker man that was walking along with a backpack, and we didn't have anything plugged in, no PA. It was literally like we were just playing along to a track, like a music video.
Right.
I had the track going.
Yeah, and he had his drum kit out there, and then we all had.
Oh yeah, we couldn't even hear it, right? It
Yeah, there was
just
no
you.
track. It was just
Yeah.
me
It was
playing to the
just
click.
you here.
And the,
Yeah, so it was like, okay, we're going to start a song, just mime it, and it doesn't have to be 100% perfect, but we're going to just play it that way. A guy is walking along in the middle of the desert, and he goes, wow, you guys sound great. And he proceeded to, talk. He proceeded to go in detail about how much he enjoyed listening to us and everything, and I was thinking, that was a huge realization of that, of and then I've caught myself where my brain fills in the gaps on sound, and it's like, oh wow, it's like whether you're tweaking out or you're just an average person, then it's like you can just
Wow.
your brain will be able to fill in gaps
Whatever
of
the fuck
sound.
it wants
yeah,
to, really.
And so if you don't understand the situation that we're just miming, you're gonna see a band and your brain is going to hear a band. Even if
Your brain is going to hear a band.
yeah, this is your brain hearing
On
a
band.
band. Yeah, on band.
Any questions, Mitch?
Yeah, yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, we interrupt each other.
Speaking of listening,
The kindness loop would keep us going for like a half hour.
yeah. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say that
Spit take.
it's not
I got the hug.
to me anyway. If you're the kind of person that wants to be socially successful
Yeah,
with people, it's not enough
Challenge.
that you just listen to people.
right.
It's also that you need to make people feel like they're heard.
Yeah.
You need to make people feel like you're listening.
Lots of physical contact.
Well, and that's where that's where when I was
Your
talking
mouth
about the
right
active
here
listening
so
thing.
they could hear you in their skull.
Yeah, like a seashell, It's like, well, no, it's that's where I was saying,
It's a
when you're really
foster
active
communication,
listening,
right? Yeah.
that's where you have to have compassion and empathy for
it's
people, because whether you agree with somebody or not, whether you see eye to eye with this person or not, they're coming from a completely different background in life. If you have a genuine level of respect for just, let's say we hadn't met and it's like we're supposed to play together, and before we play we're going to have a conversation to see feel each other out. And so if we're going into that situation respectful and with empathy and trying to get to know each other, it's going to go a lot better than me feeling like I have some sort of superiority to you, as far as oh, whatever, it's whatever, just whatever situation it be. Let's say I was an artist and I was looking for a band, and just in the
I
sense
thought you
of
meant Banksy. Sorry to
well,
interrupt.
yeah, let's say I was Banksy, but I played
Looking
bass
for
and
a
I was
band.
putting a band together, right?
Cool.
So
Go Banksy.
yeah, a bassy. See, there you go.
Bass
You asked for it. So if I was interviewing you you're my drummer, but before we played together, I wanted to hang out to see if we vibed.
To make sure if he was also a underground graffiti artist.
Yeah, underground graffiti artist who was laid on bad puns
was
with everybody.
I was trying not to spit my pen across the room. Mid-drag. That was my spit
If I
take.
go into that situation just automatically with an attitude and an ego and a chip on my shoulder and just thinking that you're not going to be able to pull this off
JWA.
for whatever reason, it's going to make your performance worse, and then I'm not going to get what I want out of a situation anyway, because you're not getting the best out of the people that you're trying to put a band together with. And there's so many situations in life like that. It's How many times have you encountered people to where they automatically will just treat you like you're a step below them just because of like your age, or just they don't know you and they have to like, they just don't trust you, and it's like, it's weird because they're not, and you can tell they're not listening, because that's
Yeah.
also like listening has to do with perception. If you perceive that this information is not important or not as valid, it's automatically going to either go over your head or just get thrown in the trash.
That's true when you're engaging somebody. I'd like to think I'm an empath, and I like to think I feel a little bit too much where people are coming from. You can sometimes feel their sense of like trepidation or bias or just anxiety because whatever. It's like it happens in all kinds of different contexts with different people, and I'm like, you're allowed that, but I can also feel it, and I can feel your lack of really connecting to me while I'm at this particular moment while I was talking back.
Yeah.
But that's why I've learned to just be like, it's all about platitudes in those situations. It's like, which it's hard to come up with those musically and make that resonate.
Yeah.
That's one point I like to say.
Right.
It's great for social situations. You know, they really grease the wheels, but in music, especially if you're trying to do something meaningful, and also engage a crowd, you need to take it a step further.
Yeah.
I would say.
Well, and that's also, again, I find that with
We
singing.
gotta tell that mariachi band did.
Yeah.
I tipped them already.
Yeah. I was going to say, how appropriate with a listening conversation. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because it's definitely, communicating musically is not always as efficient as just communicating with, verbal language.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be more difficult. But even then, like, I've been in situations where the music I'm playing is not complex, but there could still be more listening involved. And that goes back to, like, we just did a gig. I filled in for Davey doing a country gig at a private party. And it's not that what I was playing was dramatically different from the recording, but that's a band situation where it'll be pretty much the same, but then tunes could get stretched out. There could be a solo section that just goes on and gets extended.
Yeah.
There was stuff that was requested on the gig. People wanted to hear a song, and we worked it out sort of on the spot. And depending on those level of situations, it's like, well, I need to be paying attention to everybody. And the way you're playing a train beat, if you're going or and like accenting certain things, it's like, well, that will dictate how I'm playing and my dynamics and my tone and a number of things.
It also just dictates how much fun you can have playing
Yeah.
Yeah.
in a situation.
Yeah,
'Cause,
absolutely.
like, if it's not gonna derail the song, we could look at each other and you could give me like a cue, like, oh, I'm doing this, and I can like play off that.
Well,
Speaking of laughs, weird guy.
I just thought of just all the times that we just fucked around with that shit.
Yeah.
It all just hit me at once and just.
if anything, I feel like the simpler the music is, the more you need to challenge yourself to open your ears up.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Got nothing else to do.
people tend to do the exact opposite with really simple music. They tend to really tune out.
Oh, it's a pet peeve of mine. Not as high as certain musical pet peeves I have, but it's definitely up there. It's just blues. It's like, oh fuck,
and it really is-
my boner is just.
It really is one of two things that like makes or breaks any gig.
Yeah.
Is the amount of listening, and that includes like how well the musicians listen to each other, how well you can enjoy it, and how much of an asshole someone is to make you not enjoy it and not want to put any effort or listen into it and just go on autopilot.
Sometimes people can be jerks about that too, where they're just too active in the conversation. Where getting back to that thing where I said you need to, it also depends on whether you make somebody feel like you're listening to them.
Yeah.
Sometimes people can be really overbearing about that. And they can be like, hey, I heard that, and I'm going to let you know that I heard that, and I'm going to keep doing it because I think it's what you want until they actually, get pissed off.
That makes me
on
feel
stage.
good.
It's like if every time you said something, I was like, I heard that.
Yeah.
My man. Fuck yeah. I want to say that too.
Sometimes, yes.
I like this new energy of yours. I like this.
Yeah. Sometimes that
I like
that
frat
can be.
Matt.
Yes.
I like this.
Sometimes that can be super annoying. Like you play something that you were only intending to do once, and like this was cool, and then somebody catches on to it like, are you gonna do it again? I'll do it
Right.
with you.
Come on. Just keep on doing it.
Well, yeah, no, I get that. Well, I'm on both sides.
He's
of
like,
it.
I do that a lot.
Well, but I'm on both sides of that because I think I've
He
played
does it a
with
lot.
I've played with David enough now, and because we've been playing together for I think almost 10 years at this point in various
10 years
bands.
in dance, huh?
Well, yeah, because we started doing
Yeah, close enough.
yeah, well, because it's 2011 now. We started playing together.
Not
Yeah,
2011
it's
right
2011
now.
now,
Well,
therefore,
well,
2001.
Jesse lives in the past.
Hold on.
Almost
In
as
2001 when you were 6.
No, I was gonna say if it's 2021 now,
Oh,
I was
there
gonna
we
say
are.
COVID really fucked with my sense of timing. No, it's like so going
like
back that
We've been
far.
playing
It's
together
like
since February of 2013.
yeah,
Wow,
so pretty
there you
much
go.
yeah, so almost 10 years, and so at this point,
Put a date on it. Can you, day and time.
That's how my brain works, man. I just remember weird shit, real specific shit.
What which day was it, and what time?
It was a Friday because that's when I rehearsed, and it was right before test flight that semester.
he's actually right.
Did you eat beforehand?
I most definitely did.
What did you have?
I don't know.
He's got like that Mary Lou Henner
So far,
thing.
he's not perjuring himself in court.
So I bet you. Anybody want to guess what the second thing is?
Second
so
thing.
the first was that makes or breaks a gig.
Yes.
Is
Oh, we're still on that.
Should be.
Yes.
I was listening. What would the second thing?
Well, I think that's
Hearing.
a little subjective. Because, like, for me, the thing that fucks up any gig is whether the band actually plays with good internal dynamics or not. Like, when a band actually knows how to balance themselves or not, because most bands don't.
You could categorize that in listening.
Totally.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would.
Absolutely. And it seems to be the things that... It seems to be the thing that people are least sensitive to, which is bizarre to me, is that it seems like the thing that people listen to last over anything else is dynamics and how slow people are to respond to dynamics. So you really have to exaggerate dynamics to get people.
Yeah. Well, it's like what's the one thing that you're always surprised about with any band you come into? It's the guitar player. He's quiet.
Yeah.
You're like, holy crap, you're not loud.
Right.
You're not louder than everybody.
Yeah, not overly loud. Yeah.
I feel like drummers can fall into that category very easily.
Drummers
I feel
can
like
definitely
that's
fall
a
into
new
that.
thing, though.
sure.
I feel like we moved into this nice era where all guitar players now have a different sense of like volume and headroom. Like, because I feel like honestly, I'm not talking about back when I was a kid. I mean, like when I was gigging in the early 2000s, it seemed like every random band I ended up with for a while, this cat's just like, you know, whether they were good or whether they were trash, everybody was like on 11. And I'm like, this
Yeah.
is what? Can't hear shit. And the drummer just tries to match that, and I'm sitting here like, I'm not trying to play.
How can you even begin to listen to anybody else when you can't hear anybody else over yourself?
Yeah.
Right?
I wonder how much YouTube and just the internet has played a part in that in general, because I feel like
People are listening more.
there are certain things that have been, you know, certain ideas from instrument to instrument that have been proliferated successfully through social media. Like the idea that guitarists don't have to have their gain dimed to get a good sound, and that drummers probably should be a lot more ginger about how they play their cymbals.
Yeah.
I can't.
Don't let gingers play drums.
I can't.
They're
say-
in league with Satan.
I knew it. Knew it was coming.
Look what happened. They let Ginger Baker play drums. He almost took over a whole country. in
It's
Africa.
just that I've noticed drummers,
True story.
more drummers now seem to be a lot more aware of the idea of how they balance themselves.
And that's why dry cymbals are like as popular as they are.
Oh,
right
yeah.
now. Like dry cymbals are like
Yeah.
the fucking.
Yeah,
thing
you
right
even
now.
see it play
like
out.
them
in
It's
the
also
gear.
it's also a style, but I also can't say because I haven't been in a beginner band for many years, and I've
Humble brag.
I'm making a point here,
That's also not wrong.
Yeah.
and I've been in a certain type of band for a while, you know, like a high caliber cover band,
Yeah.
and you can't emulate those tones and those styles when you're at 11.
Absolutely.
And I think people, when you get to that level, they realize like, oh, I can only really get one sound without any dynamics.
At that level, people are realizing that you have to factor dynamics as a function of your overall tone on your instrument, and people are already thinking of themselves as one color in the palette in the level of the band you're in now. So.
Yeah.
And that's the fun part, because
Yeah.
you know that every time you step to that situation, you're going to have at least that context to work within,
Right.
which is like freeing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
Feels
it's,
good.
Yeah, well, it's so
Feels
funny
good.
too because it's with on that specific part of listening too. I feel like everybody has to set up those terms and conditions like for each band that they're in. Whether it's a cover band or like sort of
have to agree.
the older musicians that yeah.
Gavel it.
But like I've been around older professional musicians that have been touring their whole lives of
much
all
older?
different statuses and stuff. And like especially guitar players,
What's
they'll
the
play
age difference between y'all?
well, what?
I said, what's the age difference between you guys?
I was going to say usually at least 20, 25 years.
hot.
Yeah,
Cool.
but usually more like 30, 35 years. Yeah.
I was gonna say about 30.
Yeah. I was going to say at least 20, 25, like when I'm working in those situations and not playing. Playing, it's kind of more of a mixed bag.
Oh,
Sure.
Yeah. But it's interesting because the player,
Finally.
like the guitarists who will play loud, but they've been touring since they were teenagers, they'll play loud, but it's not uncomfortable. And it's either the way they have their amp set or it's just the fact that the band has a balance. So even if it's loud, it's not like the guitarist has a piercing tone that's screechingly loud. And they're also probably riding the volume because that's an old school thing where they'll crank the amp and then they'll have their guitar on like 5 for some parts, and then they take a lead and then they crank it, and then they're like living at about like 6 or 7 on their guitar volume.
Yeah.
So-
I used to be on board for that approach. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm telling you, it's just way too wolfy and way too loud all the time. I've never seen anybody do that old school way these days with that.
Right.
Like you couldn't do better using like a volume pedal foot switch.
Right, but that's the thing. I feel like tech has helped with this too, in that like so that helps that situation. And also, I've seen more band dynamics where on stage they don't have backline and they're running like their rigs are digital and so they're all on in-ears. So
Oh, yeah.
there's like either hardly any or sometimes like almost no stage volume except for drums and anything like that's acoustic.
Yeah.
But so you don't have monitors on stage that are clouding up any sort of listening, and then you don't have amps and stuff cranking, and then you just have everything going out to the front of house. So you're like watching a band on the side of the stage, and you're just hearing a drummer playing, and then everybody else is just like, it almost looks like they're miming, and it's kind of a trip at first.
I think that's another thing that you get experience of in terms of like crafting your tone and how you hear yourself as a player is just playing on stage with sound.
Oh, yeah.
At the front of house and being amplified, not just through your instrument.
Yeah.
Listening to yourself through a monitor. It's a real big.
Oh, I have to say that was fundamental.
Yeah, it's a real big thing for vocals for sure. I mean,
Naturally.
when you're starting out and you're doing your own sound and stuff, you tend to
Oh,
like
God.
yell and scream your vocals because you can't hear yourself.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, when you can hear yourself clearly, you realize, oh, I don't actually have to hurt myself or sing as hard as I do because there's a mic here that's
Right.
being amplified out there that is taking care of all of that for me.
Yeah.
It's really
Dude,
hard to
that's-
do that.
That brings me into that's a great point because it took me a long time to really, even though I started to cognate it early, it took a long time to condition myself and really develop like no, even less. Because the thing that is hard is that you want to be hearing yourself and you can't in those live sound situations. But I forced myself. It's just like anything else is like performative. I'm just like I have to accept that this is probably the proper dynamic no matter what I can or can't hear. It's my duty to continue as if I do have good sound.
We were talking about.
We were actually just talking about this earlier and how it's kind of a disease among drummers. It's also just it's part and parcel to playing the instrument because there is so much near field sound coming at you
Totally.
all the time. That
Near field meaning just things happening on
something
stage.
immediately
Bouncing
in
and
front
it's
of you.
projecting, it's
Yeah,
everywhere.
as far as something like reflecting from the original sound source directly at you.
Because they're
then-
membranophones,
Yeah, and then usually, you're probably behind a few cabinets.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, they might be behind you and you can hear a little more, but that can be problematic too because there's just so much sound pressure coming
Oh,
at you
yeah.
all the time that as a drummer, it's very, very, very hard, especially if you're playing outside, to feel like what you're playing is actually what's being presented to the audience. And there's a way of compensating for that happens very naturally with drummers, and it causes them to be extremely heavy-handed when they play live. And every drummer gets comfortable with their practice space, and the way that you balance yourself when you're playing by yourself is very, very different to when you play
weird knowing laughter.
with a band.
No, because it was funny. We started off the conversation with talking about the college class that like we started to learn this stuff from, and the big thing that happens at the end of every semester with more of my signature hand gestures is that
Your words, not mine.
you practice in the same classroom, which
Namaste.
at the time, the room was not professionally treated at the time, and basically what happened was they had put sound baffling and paneling, like sort of, you can't see it, citizens, but there's all of this around the studio up at the top.
Hark!
Yeah, and there's paneling that sort of like diffuses the sound, makes the room dead, deadens the room. The stuff that they had in this classroom, it was a big room with like ceramic, just like tile floor, so it was already like a reflective surface. And then all of the corkboard that they had built into the walls, somebody had painted over when they repainted the room. And so it completely negated the whole purpose. So it was one big live reflective room.
One big hand clap.
Yeah, one big hand clap, absolutely.
I love that.
And from a sound person's perspective, I should say, the room was great to mix in the sense of if you could make it sound good in there, you could adapt that to any room. And it was the same as a player because it was not conducive to hearing everybody, but it made it so where you had to actually it was a challenge, and especially in a safe classroom environment, that's really beneficial. So we went from that to a black box theater that was open and all of, just very different. And the first time you do that, it shakes you up. And I remember that feeling of feeling like you don't know how to play because you feel like you're playing notes and then everything's just like tumbling out into darkness and you're just like, what the fuck is going on? And it just, it's a discipline to actually adapt to playing in like each different space.
It's the same thing as coming in here and recording, which is like super dead, or in the vocal booth, where it's like every little nuance that you do is super loud.
Yes.
No matter how quiet you are. So
Remember how loud my fucking ghost notes were on
attest
my
to that.
sides near when we were recording Alabama? And I knew that like in the room, my ghost notes were like nice and ghosty. But on the recording, it was just like accent, ghost, ghost. And I was like, you're like just as fucking loud in here. So I basically, just to compensate, I just had to not track the ghost notes. Like I know that they're there, like internally, but for the sake of the recording and getting like a cleaner take, I just cut it.
Well, that's really funny because you can find yourself in two very different poles as a drummer too.
With yourself.
Kind of.
Wow.
But
firemen or strippers.
Whoa.
well, let me just put it this way.
Justin Davidson strikes.
As a drummer, you have situations where you are being reinforced and there are microphones, and then you have situations where it's not.
Yeah.
And where there are not, it's 100% up to you to make those decisions and judge for yourself how you should balance yourself with that in mind.
Oh, yeah.
With the room in mind.
Yeah.
And
room where it happened.
the density of the room in mind too. How many people in there? What's on the walls? What are the walls painted? Are they wood?
What's
Is
behind
there
you?
carpeting
Yeah.
in the room?
Well, we should talk
And
about the gig that you so eloquently talked about that you replaced Davey for and that we played upon.
Yes. Yeah, we
Or
were.
the space that we were playing in.
Yeah, we were playing. It was a pretty large backyard, and we were playing right up against the wall of the house. Basically, so there's a house, and then sliding glass door, big glass window behind us. We're facing out towards this backyard. So, and that part's fine, but with the window right behind us, and then we had a concrete floor.
Like
and
the glass window was the wall.
Yeah,
almost, like
pretty
that
much.
that much glass.
So
That's a lot. Okay.
Yeah, and so between the concrete and that, it's like, okay, well, if you know how to compensate for that, then not only will the listening be easier, and that we're already going to be aware of this, and then factor that in, but for the sound, like technical aspect of it too. And so,
But not only that, there was a wall to the right.
That's
and it was open to the left, and there was a covering above us.
That's right.
That was fully closed, like
Oh, wow.
solid thick
So like
wood.
an echo chamber.
Yeah, it was. And in a way, it's like if you know how to use that to your advantage, that's good. And so, again, like where I set up and how I EQ stuff and where
Made
I
my
make
drums sound huge.
Right.
Which
and
is fun.
I was
It
going
is
to say,
We're on a country gig, but fun.
yeah, exactly.
Got the arena drums out.
yeah, exactly. But it's all of this stuff factors into listening because it's some of this stuff is function with like how
Function.
you like just knowing not only how the band is going to hear this stuff, but then how an audience is going to hear something, and then first and foremost getting the group comfortable with whatever the situation is that you're going to be in. And as a bass player, I've had to do that a lot where I walk into a gig situation and we have an art museum here in town. And the third floor of that, they'll do concerts and stuff in and, and I was going to say we've done a couple of those.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. If you go
That's
to,
a fucking echo chamber.
yeah, the Museum of Art and History in Lancaster, they have all their live streams up on their YouTube page. And we've played a few of those now. I think 3 or 4. Yeah.
I count 4. I watched them.
Yeah. Well, you being the
There's the one with the
supportive-
costume, which is hard to forget. and
Yeah,
then I'm pretty sure
Halloween.
There's 3 regular ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That stupid acoustic one.
Yeah.
That was the first one. That was I was gonna
Okay, yeah.
stupid acoustic one.
And my brother Cajon didn't use it.
Yeah.
Sat on it.
Yeah, I thought you were actually gonna finally play a cajon, but it was just a glorified chair. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But you made sure you were in the shot.
Yeah.
That's how you do it, team.
So that room is a huge glass enclosure. So glass ceiling and glass walls with a hardwood floor.
How are you gonna bust through it?
I feel like busting loose. That's the only song reference I could think
I
of.
just meant the glass.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so yeah, in that situation, I've played private parties in that same room, and then I've also done gigs with my original
What kind of
band there. I was gonna say it was actually a private party for one of the space companies out here, and like they hired.
Did the company have a birthday?
Yeah, they had a very happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah,
Sad birthday.
yeah. I forget which one it was. It was one of the space companies out here. And so we're playing this party, and I brought a small little gigging
know
amp
there
that
were
I
so
had to
many
turn
space
down,
companies.
like, because the room was so reflective and people were trying to talk. I had to turn down to, like, next to nothing. And it was one of those things where it's like, okay, well, not only will the band hear me better doing it this way, but it will help the overall situation. And even if I'm not stoked about that, it's like those are the decisions you have to make. And also, I'm going to cut some of the lows and other frequencies that are going to be problematic and like cut those like on the amp.
See, that's where it gets interesting because there's only so much control that you have. So the
Right.
point I was making earlier about, there being 2 different poles as a drummer is that even if you're the guy who has lots of experience and you know how to compensate for any given situation you're in, you're still ultimately at the mercy of your sound engineer.
Yeah.
And so I've definitely been in situations where I've, made that conscious compensation for a room or
Right.
things like that and playing with a good balance, but it may not be in alignment with what the engineer is thinking. So I've been in situations where I've had an engineer come up to me and say, hey man, like you can hit harder. You're not even like opening the gates. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, what do you mean gates? We're in a small venue that you could not mic me at all, and you're gating the drums.
Yeah.
It's like it makes no sense.
Right.
But you will ultimately find yourself in those kind of situations, and then you can be in completely the opposite too, where there are the guys that are not so self-aware and basically play the way they play, regardless of what the room they're in.
Yeah.
That was me for many years.
Yeah.
I think it's
Really?
every drummer for a time.
I'm just raising my hand to that one easy. I
You
don't
could
give
also
a
play
fuck.
the opposite instrument. Like you were commenting earlier, how like you would have to look at me
Yeah.
to fill in the sound. Well, that's because neither of us could hear me.
Nice.
It's also
Because
true.
when I'm playing keys, the front of house engineer's always like, just throw your amp out the window. We're just going direct.
Yep.
And then they have complete control over whether I hear myself or not.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're completely at their mercy.
Through the monitors. So sometimes, I just have to, I know the music. This is what it's supposed to.
Yeah.
These are the
yeah.
keys I'm supposed
Whatever
to
you
play.
guys get on your end,
It's,
it's not,
hopefully that's what's
Exactly.
coming out front.
Yeah.
Too true.
Right.
I mean, really, the only way you can judge it and make improvements to that yourself is by recording yourself. Like recording your gigs and watching it back and getting an idea for how you actually come across.
Yeah.
Yes.
When you play.
Yes.
Or just knowing what you sound like and
or,
having trust in
or
what
even
you,
what the venue sounds like or how the sound engineer mixes you. If you record the gigs that you do, then you can actually get a really objective picture of what it actually sounded
Yeah,
like. And
for
if that's a place you're going to work again in the future, you kind of build this Rolodex in your mind of the places that you frequent and how you play there and how you can adjust. to
I
make that
recorded
sound.
myself a lot there, but I was so fucking like gung ho in like knowing like my own shit.
Oh, yeah.
That I was just like I would hear what the sound engineer was talking about as far as like my ride just eating the vocals like that were standing like right in front of me and shit.
Yeah.
But I would always like at that point I would just go like, man, it's the fucking venue's fault. I'm playing right up
Well,
against a brick wall, and
I was gonna
nothing
say-
I can fucking do about it.
Yeah,
you know,
no,
it's like it's not. No,
But
no,
it,
shame
it's
on
all
me.
but it is it's again like all of this goes to the bigger picture of everybody working with each other to make the
better
show happen. Yeah, well, it's true.
and after a while you'll start to hear patterns with how you sound in different venues and how
Yeah.
people mix you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because even if it's a different venue, generally, if they're a good sound engineer, they're going to mix the same way.
Yeah.
If you have a sound, they're going to mix you the same way because they've come across your sound before.
Well, and also they know the room. If they're a good
And they know
engineer,
the room,
yeah,
yeah.
they're mixing to the room, and like it's the same thing as a musician. And not to interrupt you, but it is something
Get
to
in
where
I did. But go ahead.
Get in there.
Shame on me.
Listen
Well, no,
in.
just to add that point of like it's the same way that a musician should adapt to the room that they're in. It's like the engineer is going to mix to the room and not just mix because it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm used to a bigger venue and now I'm coming into this place or whatever the case is.
Well,
Yeah,
hopefully
mix
the
engineer.
engineer understands the idiom of what you're playing too.
Yeah.
Because you can have a great sound engineer that knows what they're doing, but if they don't know how to mix a jazz group well, and they mix it like they're going to mix a rock group,
Oof.
Yeah.
there's nothing you can do about that.
If they're
That's one of those unfortunate things. Because you could have somebody who's actually decent at sound but doesn't have that one little bit figured
Right.
out yet. And they're just like, boom, I know where exactly to throw the
Well,
levels. Like, I played through that
Yeah, there's a
before,
lot of
so-
sound engineers that are like that. They figure out like a balance
Yeah.
that they like, and they don't really take into mind that changes depending on what style of music is being played.
And band to band.
dad box.
Yeah. Definitely band to band, but there are definitely more ideal ratios of vocal to say kick drum or hi hat, all of these things that have to be accounted for.
If they're good engineers, they're some of the most active listeners
Yes.
Hopefully,
of the whole situation. I know we came across he who shall not be named, who frequently bragged about this one band, this four-piece blues band that he would all he had to do was set the levels and walk away. And
Yeah,
like,
I'm
that's
not a
cool.
fan.
That's like
It's a
good.
good album title.
That's good on the band for having those dynamics and knowing how they sound on stage, but that's also terrible for the engineer who's not,
right.
That uses that
adjusting
as
to
the
any
standard.
who's not adjusting to anything, and takes that principle to other bands, that like bigger bands that are doing way more complicated stuff that need to adhere to that logic.
Yeah.
Song to song in many cases.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I was gonna say there are certain situations that I wouldn't set it and forget it, but like if you're doing DJ stuff, for example, not to go on a tangent about sound, but it's like you're getting a consistent level from usually a left and a right.
Yeah.
As far as they're sending you a stereo signal, so if you have a sound system up, that one is going to your left channel, your right channel, basically, and you're getting a stereo perspective of the mix. So that is like, if you put a pad on that to where they don't blow up your system, then, it's like, yeah, you can potentially set that and forget it, But as far as a band, I don't care how many times I've worked a situation or done a situation or been in a, like, oh yeah, I've mixed this kind of music before. I don't ever I never liked treating it that way, and I'm not a fan of that approach because the people that do it the best are actively listening and actively engaged in what's going on. And
Yeah, because unless like you said, you're a DJ with constant levels.
yeah,
It doesn't matter how much you keyboard, drums, guitar, bass, whatever. It doesn't matter how much you make like all your patches, all your sounds, all your tones, all your hits, the exact same level. There's still going to be dynamics,
yes.
and it doesn't matter how much you slam the compressor in the board. There's still going to be dynamics.
Yeah.
And at some point, somebody's going to be louder than they should be,
Yeah.
or quieter than they should be, and you're going to need to adjust that.
Yeah, and all of this to me is like we're talking about the same thing because I don't like that. I don't like being in those situations as much as I don't like gigging with musicians that are just not paying attention to what's going on around them and the dynamics of that situation.
Right.
And not that I hold any personal grudges or anything like that, but it's just, but
that was another. That was another thing that the he shall not be named. Like personally told me was to take a decibel meter and make sure all of my patches were the same decibel.
I mean, there's truth in that, but there's also still the dynamic
that's
aspect
the kind
of
of
it.
flex that only insane people try to pull off.
No,
dude, I'm
it's.
sorry.
I mean,
Like,
it's,
my Rhodes.
Whatevers.
If my Rhodes patch and my synth patch are the same decibel, like yeah, that's going to be the same level. But depending on the song, I may not want the synth to be that loud.
no. It's. I mean, the point of that is like the good part to take away from that is like, yeah, you want to match your patches to where it's like they're all relatively level as close as possible, and so you're not getting insane jumps on things, and that's guitar players too. So it's like, yeah, I get where that approach is coming from,
You
but
want it close.
well, but at the same time, it's like you're saying, it's like a Rhodes and a Whirly and a
Every road
One
has
second.
its
One
thorn.
second.
Please.
ooh.
Okay, continue.
Well, no, I feel that in band situations the most because it's, I've been in situations where it's like, I don't care if somebody's a tone snob or not. That's not a prerequisite of like what I look for in musicians, but I'm not a fan of, as much as the musical side of things, when people sort of just have like sort of one sound or dynamic as like a guitar player or whatever, and they're not making any adjustments to that. Or even as a bass player, if I'm not playing with any pedals at all, it's like I can play on the neck and get more of a round, sort of upright bass, Paul McCartney-ish tone.
Whoa.
If I want to get like the Jocko sound, I play on the bridge. I do a mix of both. And like, just saying, like, if I'm wanting that particular vibe, that's what you do. And I'm not just going to play at one volume level or one, place on the bass for the whole entire set. It's like, that's not how it works.
Twoo.
Very
You say
true.
twoo?
Twoo. Well, you disagree?
Yeah.
What are you, the prince? The
Yeah,
priest
that's
from
Bride,
Princess
so,
Bride.
yeah.
Run away.
Yeah.
Wait.
No,
Yeah.
I personally, I love all that type of shit. But that's only come with years and experience more than anything. I mean, you don't just wake up and you're just like, dude, I'm a fucking listener of a musician. Like, I don't think anybody that just starts off playing any instrument just starts off just like locking in with
No,
anyone.
No.
it's as important as any other aspect of your practicing is.
Yes.
And also just understanding that at a certain point, like letting go of your own hubris and realizing that there's a whole literal world of information that you might not necessarily be aware of. And that was my experience. That's the whole Matrix analogy that you enjoyed so much.
Did I?
I don't know. I was gonna say, I don't know. But
Adding to
I mean, yes, and it was good.
adding to that,
Red
we
pill.
could say how important it is just to listen to music and expand
yeah, absolutely.
your
Yeah.
vocabulary of other bands. I've been on this like high fidelity music kick lately. I just listened to Steely Dan's 2 Against Nature at 96K, 24-bit. And I was just sitting on the couch, like right before you guys got here. Davey walked in. I was just like,
He was in the zone for real. But he showed it to me the other day. Like the difference is intense.
Yeah.
Really?
It's
For sure.
I gotta
stuff
hear
I've
this.
never
High-res is
never
dope.
heard before.
Yeah.
Just like crazy dynamics and separation of things, and like if you've ever listened to a song and never been able to understand what the lyrics are,
Yeah.
just from listening to it, it's not necessarily because they're mumbling.
Yeah.
It might be just because you're listening on a phone and it's an MP3.
Yeah.
It's
It's
hyper
all
compressed.
Yeah.
Hyper-compressed.
Yeah, no, I had that experience back August last year.
You got
it was
compressed?
yeah, I got very compressed.
I wish you would have talked to me.
Yeah.
If you ever want to expand, I know somebody for that too.
Oh,
shit.
man. No, I'm just
You're
glad.
well connected.
I'm just glad
Everyone
Davey.
says so.
I'm just glad Davey's here because he's really like a limiter. You know, it kind of keeps me in check. Yeah.
I'm your gate.
Audio puns. But yeah, I like August. I met up with a couple sound engineer buddies of mine.
Cool.
One of them was a former instructor of mine, and this other friend that we met up at this guy's house. I'll name drop. Bob Carlson is
Fuck
his
yeah,
name.
dude.
Whoa.
Yeah, and
A legend.
yeah, so he has an insane sound system at his house that's a bunch of like studio gear basically, and like old school like JBL subwoofers and a true surround system. And his whole thing is listening in high fidelity, like he's an audiophile. So he puts on a HD CD of which I had,
HDC.
yeah. I never heard of this format before, but it's like a really high fidelity version of a CD. And apparently they did some remixes of Dark Side of the Moon specifically for this. And with his sound system, and I've heard that record, I don't know, countless times. You know, it's like breathing at this point with how many times I've heard it. And with listening to it, I was sitting there and already not in a good headspace because of quarantine and losing gigs and stuff. And like, I heard this album like I heard it for the first time because I was hearing guitar parts and key parts and textures in here that I had never heard before. And also just the hearing it in surround, which I had never heard before. So like all the crazy panning that's going on and like on the run. So like blah, 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 and like all that stuff just feeling like it's flying by your head. And I'm
Does
just
feel good.
yeah, and I'm just sitting here listening like this is like I'm hearing this thing like I've never heard it before.
That shit's dangerous though, because it's addicting.
Oh yeah, you get back in
Get
your
into that shit,
you
and you're just
you-
like, I never want to go back to regular
no, you
listening.
get
Yeah.
back in your car and then you have
It's
to
like
go
a
back
really
to making
level
fire out of rocks and shit.
Yeah,
It's
dude.
just like you're
Really
It's
just
so
level
addicting
Yeah.
getting into
Yeah.
that shit.
Well, dude, it's like the first time you get
Freshly
the
paved
experience
road.
of being in like an actually well-treated room with a
Oh,
kick-ass pair of reference monitors. It's like there's no comparison.
You just want
after
to
that.
live there.
Oh,
You
yeah.
don't want to go back.
oh yeah, absolutely.
You can start to understand why people spend so much money on record players and preamps
Oh,
for their
fuck yeah.
for their
Fuck yeah.
high fidelity systems and
Because you just can't go back. Once you like get into that like that next step, you're like, oh, this is just where I am now, and then it just keeps on going.
It's like
higher and
opting
higher.
to watch everything at 480p instead of,
My
4K.
son. Oh, I just imagine that right now.
Careful, you're gonna soil the king's robes with your poor definition. Fucking what an elitist piece of shit.
I straight okay. Tell you what. Tell you this. I bought another TV for my studio because I just wanted to run my fucking Pro Tools like on my TV over here instead of having to go back to my fucking computer. And I was like, I just need a fucking TV. Just whatever, just the basic bit shit that Best Buy has. Just the cheapest thing at this size. Cool, whatever. 120 bucks, 720p, I don't care. Whatever, that's all I need. So I install it and within 5 minutes, I can just tell that it's not that nicer 1080 look. And all I needed with this thing was just for a reference, just so I can just do my shit from here instead of having to get up. And I shit you not, only 2 days later, I was just like, no, I can't do this. And I just went to go buy a more expensive TV.
We get it. You hate the common man.
Once,
I
okay.
hate lowered quality things.
once you've watched the original Tron in 8K,
What?
no going back.
Wow. Okay.
No, there are just certain things.
Okay.
There are certain things I'll refuse to just like, settle on now. And audio is like one of those things that's
Fair.
a rabbit hole that you can
No,
just.
but that.
Fidelity is
I
a
mean-
dragon to chase in any medium.
Well,
Yes,
but can
dude.
I take a step back and make it overly philosophical as I'm wanting
Please.
to do?
Yeah, great.
That it's allowed. I'm not at my wit's end yet.
I was waiting for it.
That is, especially for all of us. I mean, that's why I'm friends with you guys because you're always pushing. One of the reasons.
I was gonna
It's-
say.
Yeah. Well, no.
I think
You,
our friendship.
yeah.
So it's like the
let's-
same reason you're friends with all of us?
Let's not get carried away, Morgan.
That itself is weird.
No, you guys always push yourselves in the same way that this fucking Royal Highness over here is not satisfied with 480i, whatever
Not
it
even
is.
satisfied with 720.
Yeah, not yeah.
Sometimes 1080 ain't enough.
Yeah. That is how.
But it'll do.
That's how everybody at this table approaches
slogan
their
right there.
craft of being a musician.
Yeah.
To
Because
see every pixel of that waveform.
yeah, it's if you guys were satisfied with standard definition, you would have stopped practicing a long time ago.
Sure.
And stopped challenging yourself a long time ago.
Able to hold down a beat at the same time as a song and not like fuck it up royally. I could have just been like,
Yeah.
I'm done.
This moment sticks in my head forever because I remember taking lessons as a kid, and then there was a big recital that would happen like every quarter or like twice a year. There was a recital, and then I got thrown "For Whom the Bell Tolls" by Metallica, and I had a week and a half to learn it because it was like, hey, this person's not going to be able to make it. Can you fill in?
had to find
And I
that
remember
sharp.
being legitimately scared of how am I going to learn a song in a week and a half? Because because I had these few songs that I had practiced for months to do at the recital, and the idea of like
Yeah.
I only have a week and a half and being so nervous. And now I've done gigs where it's like I've been asked to do stuff a couple days before, a day before, and it's like, hey, can you learn these songs? And I'm like, yeah, no
That
problem.
was that was that 480p
Or at the time of the
CRTV
gig.
thinking.
Yeah, that was.
then.
I was gonna say. That was like 240. I wasn't even at 480.
Sometimes
yet.
that can be a problem too if people realize that you have like the kind of listening skills, or you're
Yeah.
you're a great reader, or you can transcribe things fast. When people know that, sometimes people will take advantage of that too.
Yeah.
And I've been on so many gigs where like
Matt will fix it.
more like people will notice that
Ask Matt.
that I can read and that I can chart things really fast
Yeah.
over time, and it happens a lot where people will like ask me to learn a song in between sets to play on a gig.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
point.
if we want to get if we want to get real nerdy with the analogies, like
Please.
that's like you've got the 4K resolution skills, and they're asking you to turn on ray tracing.
Right.
It's like it's not needed, but it sure makes things prettier.
Right.
Yeah.
I knew what that meant.
Sorry, buddy. The adults at
Like-
the table understand.
Yeah, that's all right.
There was one time I played with Davey with Benny where Benny had me learn like an entire like half of a set in between.
Oh man.
He's got a habit. He's got a penchant for that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, that was
He likes taking requests and saying that, yeah, we'll learn that song in the break.
yeah. And to
If
me,
you've got the
it's
players to do it, he's not lying.
I like situations.
He's lying in terms of us learning it.
I
We don't
mean,
learn it.
well, like we did that with Hotel California on the last gig, and we weren't even on a.
We didn't learn it during the break though.
No, but we had to figure it out on the spot, and so I've heard that song enough times just being an American citizen and growing up with classic rock radio to where I'm like, okay,
More prerequisites to be considered an American. Okay.
Well, I'm just saying it's like
So
you.
people got to speak English in your America. They got to know a Hotel California.
No, I'm just
You gotta
saying
guess the changes?
it's more like the same way that if there's chemicals in your water supply that you don't want, it's just you're naturally going to be exposed to a higher level of Eagles per particle. What is that?
Eagles per million.
Yeah, Eagles per million.
You
Then
smell toast right now?
yeah.
Are you having a stroke?
No,
Are you okay?
I'm just saying, it's like
thought I was tired.
if music like that was a traceable chemical that you could like test in your body, and it's like, yeah, you would have a higher level of that just growing up in this country. Yeah.
What?
No, yeah. What do you mean what? You don't tell me you're walking into a fucking shopping mall and you hear on a dark desert highway and you just want to throw yourself off a ledge. It's like, you know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Wait, what?
Yeah, it's like just you hear these songs just that get beaten in like
You say the same
like
thing about Mustang Sally, and I'm just like, I
yeah,
can
or
hear
Back
it
in Black
right
or any
now.
of those songs.
Oh,
Yeah.
shit, Back in Black.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's like those songs just get beaten into your head. So it's like if I have to pull it out on a gig, then I can. I know
I
it
get it, I
enough
get
because
it.
I've just heard it so
of the
many fucking
chemicals in
times.
the water.
Yeah, the chemicals in the water, bro.
Got
I agree. The elites don't want you to know those ducks at the park are free.
Yeah.
You can take them home.
Sounds like you need. Oh my Christ. I was gonna say, sounds like you need to follow the money.
No joking though, that bass line is pretty killer, and you did nail it pretty.
Oh, well, thank you.
So,
Well, I
I wasn't even there for
I wasn't
it.
there either, but I believe it.
No, but I've heard that song enough, and I've gotten to this point to where with my ear, I can hum something in my head and pick it out and not be like, oh man, I got to sit down and learn that song when it's something like Hotel California or,
Isn't that a great place to be?
well, you can check out anytime you like,
Hotel
but you can never
California?
leave. What?
Oh, Lord.
Sorry. No, it is being serious about your
The
point.
thing is, though,
Yeah, it is.
people, it's all practice. It's
It
not
is,
something that you go
and
like, oh, I've been playing for 20 years
Practice
and
makes perverts.
I can't do it. Well, just start somewhere.
Can.
Put on a record that you've listened to for forever and just like
Right.
really dial into like
get your daily dose of
Not
Eagles
to-
per million.
Not to. Not
you're
to
gonna be
cross
surprised. Find some shit.
podcast, but I was listening to a good music podcast today, and this cat named Tash Neal was on, and he was. Oh gosh, I forgot my point though. Come back to me.
Oh
You
man,
can't do that when you go cross podcast. Maybe that's the truth. I committed the sin of cross podcast.
That's all right. No,
but
it-
in the meantime, I can
yes.
find fault with your article. So
all right. Go on.
because this is outro, and you guys can tell because now I'm talking.
I'm Peter Parker, and then you're J.K. Simmons who works at the.
Jay Jameson.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jay Jameson, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of wanted to posit some philosophical questions about the difference between hearing and listening. So, like,
Yeah,
I had
away.
friends. Yeah, what he said. I had friends in school that had like perfect pitch,
Okay.
and I could tell you that like they didn't really like utilize it as much as I would have. They were like lazy about the fact that they had it.
Yeah,
So I think
okay.
back to your article, and you're like, hearing is like naturalistic and primitive. It's scanning the horizon for threats. It's listening to the rattling sound of your Geo Metro.
In your
But-
1997
I submit to you,
Geo
sir,
Metro.
If you know
Waiting for it to blow
intrinsically
up.
as you listen to that rattle worriedly that it is in fact a D flat, are you hearing or listening now?
See,
I
I
mean-
had a friend. I had a friend in college who'd had that, but I call that absolute pitch and not perfect pitch because I think perfect pitch can be trained.
I do
And
too.
perfect pitch is
You're
like
right. I
perfect
think there's
relative pitch.
Yeah, perfect
Yeah.
relative pitch for sure.
Absolute pitch is, which this guy had, was you open the door,
That's the
it goes,
correct
and he goes, that's this note.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the discernment of a note with no reference.
Exactly.
I would still put that in the listening.
What he said, everyone.
Well,
What is this?
That's a lava lamp.
whatever that note is.
Ooh, child, things are gonna get easier.
A?
That's where you're at.
It's an A?
I feel like it's more of a flat key, like
I
a
don't
flat.
know. Yeah,
Ooh,
I can't.
child.
Well,
and then
none
it's-
of us
And
here
then it
have it, so-
modulates.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Well, you can tell where my fucking relative pitch is.
Started at A.
Oh wait, C C C C C C C B C C C C C C C.
See,
Oh, it's a B.
anybody out there who's thinking about marrying a musician,
It's a
this
C
is
or a
what you
B.
have to look forward to.
That or
Camping.
incessant drumming on every surface. with
Yeah, yeah,
fingertips,
yeah.
Which everyone loves.
Yeah, no,
Put
but
in the comments what that note was.
yeah.
If you can hear that.
Absolutists, get on it. Hey, do it like Pitbull style. They're like,
That hurts. That hurts to flick.
yeah.
that's what he said.
I mean, you can say that about so many things in life. But no,
So that's your answer is whatever just happened?
No, I was gonna make a sarcastic answer about how I write from my perspective and I don't care about what other people's perspectives are, just to not really answer your question. But in a truthful answer, I don't know. If you're looking at it, I was thinking more
Talking to
of
them now.
yeah. I was gonna say my focus was on the Pelican case over there on that chair.
Fly Pelican.
Yeah,
That's where I keep my
Fly
Pelican.
Pelican. Fly. That's your Pelican brief.
That would be wild to see a piece of foam inside of a case perfectly cut out in a pelican shape, and it's like, all right, little buddy.
Great, dude. Oh my Jesus.
You grab it out of the air, you're just like,
Yeah,
This is where you live
yeah,
now.
yeah.
That's so weird.
Well, I don't know. I would still put that in the listening category because unless you're but that's all about perspective, right? Because
It's all
yeah.
perspective.
Well, it is.
It is.
Well, no, it is because it's. If you are, I'm playing the fucking table keys, whatever. I do this every episode. Get used to
The
it.
table together.
Yeah, I'm petting the table, whatever the fuck.
it's a nice table.
Yeah, it's a very nice table. This is a classy cloth here.
It's a good boy.
Yeah. No,
It's a nice table.
it is.
Max made it look real nice.
Yeah, he did. Dude, look at what Max
Look
did.
behind you, look around you.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, I'm sorry.
It's like you just hit the nail on the head with that. So I'm just gonna tuck my hands right here. So I'm not doing the hand motions.
Superstar.
Are you gonna smell
Yeah,
milk?
yes, exactly.
Play this scene out in the palm of my hand.
Okay,
Right, Lola.
if you're somebody that has just always had perfect pitch, like let's say it's something that was sort of like an innate ability that you had, and it's not something you had to work on, which there are people that have that. So maybe you are more complacent with it than if it's something that you really had to work at to develop great pitch. So
Right.
because of that, you might be somebody that's more actively listening to pitches and trying to figure things out, and you might have more of a pride in that as opposed to somebody that has just always had that. Now, I don't, but see, and again, we're talking about just generic perspectives, right? So I would still, if someone's not complacent with their attitude, I would say that falls into the active listening category because you're going to be hypersensitive and aware to so many things around you. And if you're open to listening to that, like if David goes like being annoying and you're like, oh, he's being annoying in this key.
I can understand. I feel like if you don't
Wow, the slams.
if you don't get like active joy out of something, it's kind of similar to child prodigies. 'Cause there's like a high percentage of child prodigies musicians who they don't end up doing anything with music
Right.
when they get into their teens or later.
Right.
And it's because they're so good that it's like, well, this is all it is. Like, it's
Is this all there is?
Yeah.
Well, it's also that this is how it's always been.
Right.
Too. So when you
said it was
when you
some
come
sauce.
up from a perspective of having like a prodigious talent,
It's hard to find progression.
yeah, sometimes it doesn't have the same weight or meaning to that person as something else because just by virtue of the fact that it came so easily, sometimes I think people can feel a little cheap about
Yeah.
things like that.
I mean, you could say the same thing about like kids that are born into like mega wealthy families. Like
Right.
they just grow up with just the best of the best shit.
And they're
they
not
can just-
happy.
And they're not happy. They're just sitting in a multi-mega
Not
million-dollar
knowing the
mansion.
cost of
Right.
milk.
Not knowing
Yeah.
the cost of milk. They've got every system, every game, and they're just sitting there just like,
Right, because everybody grows up at a different baseline.
yeah.
Yeah.
And your baseline is what your baseline is, regardless of what the circumstances of
Yeah,
it
it just
Right.
is what it is.
That's the
But
confounding truth.
the guy that I went to college with, who had
Oh, yeah?
crazy the absolute pitch, he was like super into what we were doing, jazz keyboardist, and was amazing and like constantly getting better and like
Yeah.
just had
No.
like he used his ear to make everything that he played so much better than it needed to be.
Using his powers for good.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and everybody can
With great
do
pitch comes
great
great
responsibility.
musicality.
Yeah.
That's their responsibility, but it works too.
Yeah.
That's saucy.
Yeah, well,
Musicality.
it's absolutely true, and it doesn't matter your ability. It's like you can do that in your own.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do that in your own special way, Davey.
That's neat.
Yeah, very neat.
You're cool.
Yeah, you're cool. I like your hat. You're chasing a lot of astral sort of activity. Chase the comet. I don't know.
Believe the way this man talks to me?
I don't know.
Chasing
I don't
the
know.
astral?
I don't know what the kids are into nowadays. But
It's a weird way to
see-
talk to your lawyer.
Yeah, if you're
forget
true, I
that.
advise you to
Don't you
completely,
forget.
I thought he got
Canon.
get off of this topic.
Well, I assume with that hat he got demoted from attorney.
And you'll need the cocaine.
Yeah, yeah. Just a tiny
How do you think
taste.
lawyers dress on a fucking Friday, bro?
Yeah.
I get it popping just because I'm a lawyer, bro.
Yeah, it's casual
I
Friday.
get in.
It's casual Friday at McGillicuddy and Associates.
McGillick? Okay.
That's the first name that came to
That's a good
mind.
one. I was like, you know what, it's fine. There's a lot of fighting Irish lawyers out
Yeah,
there.
you have a catchy phone
Oh,
number.
fighting's pretty.
Yeah, I was gonna say you got a catchy phone number that you could advertise on daytime TV over and over and over
Sure,
again.
you know I do. 1-900-777-7775.
Yeah,
I'm surprised you didn't jump on 6666.
yeah,
It was the first thing that came to mind, so I shifted.
yeah.
In the context of using powers for good, even though you can train to get your ear like really dialed in and hearing all the details of your bass as your drummer, your keyboards, your guitars,
Yeah.
and knowing like how to put all those pieces in there, just because you can doesn't mean you always should necessarily.
Right.
Because sure, you could try to accent every single thing that your bassist is doing, but doing it every single time shows that okay, you can, but there's no impact anymore if you're doing it every single time. If you're hitting your accents with your singer every single time, like that could just be like eating the vocal line. Like you have to know when and where and actually practice how to use those newfound abilities for good.
Unless you
That's
dedicate
great, dude.
one limb to every musician.
One limb to rule them all.
My,
One limb
my,
to bind them.
my kick goes with the bass.
Kick is always the bass.
My snare goes with the guitar.
That'll sound fun.
My hi-hat
Song's already.
my hi-hat goes with the singer.
And what, your Toms and Ride are
upset by that.
just chilling with your keyboardist?
Yeah. Just chilling.
yeah.
Just
Oh man.
That's like he's like he doesn't like that. He doesn't like that gumbo.
You realize you slowly turned him into Robert De Niro?
Yeah, look at that. He got, like he ate him like that. Look at that. Oh yeah.
Excuse me? What the fuck are you playing?
These drums.
Excuse me?
oh man, use those powers.
No,
for
you
good.
insulted him a little bit.
Yeah.
Because if you run into, you can run into those situations, especially if it's not like your own band. If you're just like a fill-in kind of person, you come in like, oh yeah, I listened to the songs, I know exactly
Yeah.
what you guys are gonna be doing, and I'm gonna be hitting all that shit with you. That could turn from like, oh man, this guy's really listening to. Can you just do your job?
Well,
please?
yeah.
It's the
That's-
song of Phil.
Yeah.
No groove.
It's got no.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And it could turn into that like real quick if
Yeah.
you let it get out of hand.
That's my
Absolutely.
only drummer pet peeve.
I mean,
That's
you
my
could-
only drummer pet
You
peeve.
could also make the case that if there's a distinction between a fill and a groove, then that's already a problem.
Let's groove
'Cause
tonight. Phil
grooves-
Collins.
Fills need to also groove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
can't just
I haven't heard that
insert.
version.
when you,
Oh, dude. Dude.
whack.
Yes. Absolutely.
You fucking sitting there.
I don't recommend it.
Fucking
Like, was that a
worst.
fill?
No.
Technically,
It was masturbation
technically
is
it
what
was a
that
fill, but
It was ornamental.
It's called jerking off, is what that is.
Whoa!
but you have to know how and when to
Censors.
actually do that, and that just requires practice.
Practice.
Right.
Practice.
Practice ending the show now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Make
Yeah.
airplane sounds?
What? Yeah. You always make airplane sounds.
Do I?
Yeah.
I'm gonna do my classic, my patented single engine Cessna. Doppler.
It's like I was really there
Yeah.
in the passenger seat.
Yeah.
It feels gentle
Yeah.
listing of the cockpit.
Yeah. Again, you're listening to the engine that he's
Actively.
got. Actively
Actively.
listening.
Feeling it out.
Feeling it out.
No.
Listening to the engine of the plane and not paying attention to the fact that your pilot has a trucker hat on, and that could be a very
And that's
dangerous.
Not, that's not bad or weird.
Yeah, I was gonna. You look like the guy who always gets Indiana Jones out of a jam.
I am. I forgot what I got. That guy's name was Jock.
Yes.
Remember he's running for the plane? He said, Jock, start the engine.
Yeah,
Jock.
yeah.
And Jock is just like reading the. Yeah, that's what he's doing.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Yeah, that's all kind of you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think something to actually practice. If somebody were like, "Well, how do I practice listening?" Something that I found is really helpful. When I'm listening to a song, I try to actively imagine. Like what type of gear they're playing on. I try to hear out the cymbals that are being played, whether they're brilliant, whether they're lathed on top, whether they're dry cymbals, what size is the snare, what size is the kit, what type of heads is this person using, what type of cab is the guitarist using, like how do they have their shit dialed.
Right.
It's little tiny shit like that, like you could be off like all the way completely, but the fact that you're getting used to what certain things sound like in certain situations that you familiarize yourself with. Okay, so it's a tinnier sounding guitar, so maybe the amp isn't very large, or maybe it is, but they have these settings, or maybe the guitar is this scale, or just all those little tiny details that go into.
Yeah, it's a living, breathing thing.
Right.
Yeah,
and that's something that I use to actively like practice listening. That way I can dial into just trying, just seeing what's what. Because even if you're wrong, you're still
You're informing yourself in a way for sure, right?
Yeah.
You figure out what works, what doesn't for you.
I like to actively imagine that I'm the captain of the Starship Enterprise, and we're going on a
Are we talking OG
Saucy
or
voyage.
TNG?
Yeah. Well,
OG or TNG?
TNG.
Oh, I figured. You got that Picard energy.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I like to pretend that I'm filling in for Judge Judy week to week on the podcast, and it's like, who will decide this traffic ticket case, and then, but like listening to like, how am I wrapping this gavel? Is it like, do I want to grace it off the wood? Do I want to like let the gavel fall onto the wood and like let the gavel do the work, and I'm not using like my full forearm to like get all of the
Please don't
energy
break
into
them
there?
off.
It's going to set the tone for the entire case.
Yeah.
Right.
It's gonna bring the whole room together.
No, when the court's in session and I'm just like just treating it like a, you know what I mean? It's like, it's going to be, I like how that's going to make the, no, it might.
The way you're waggling, that
I
helped.
got long arms, you never know. So,
Gavelnomics.
yes,
Thanks for that.
Gavelnomics. So before we sign off and land the single-engine Cessna that Davey is flying, any other Jerry's final thought for anybody before we wrap up?
I mean, I can give everybody an exercise. I think it's something that a lot of people teach, but I think that its importance can't be understated. And so I could start by asking a question like, at what point do you know that you've really learned a piece of music from an aural standpoint?
Yeah.
If I can, usually I'll know if I've got something dialed. If I have to play it, I will play it without anyone. I will play the entire song in my head, know everybody's parts as I'm playing it through. And if I want it one step further, I just won't even be on the kit. I'll just play the entire song from start to finish with all the bits and pieces and details, and that's when I know like I've got a song like
Dope.
Yeah.
Seriously, that's dope.
I have a couple ways I do that. One is that, like, just setting a click to the tempo of the song and playing it through with nothing and not having any hesitation about the parts. Another is kind of mentally scanning a piece and thinking about playing it. And do I feel uncomfortable when I hit any sections? And if I can think about it, oh yeah, I know that song. If I feel weird about it, I will get a little bit anxious going like, I don't quite remember what that part on the bridge is. So there's that. Also, if I'm playing it, and you don't want to do this on a gig, but if I'm practicing it and I've hit the point where I start to daydream and my mind drifts, I don't want to do that while I'm playing, but it's a good sign in that, like, if my brain is starting to go into autopilot while playing something, that means I've pretty much got it down. And on a gig, I won't do that, but I just, like, I can feel where my mind will get bored with, like, playing something if I've played a song over and over and over and over again, which is good because if you're preparing for a gig, that's kind of the point where you want to be. And yeah, record yourself and you still want to like listen to how you're playing these things, but just in general, when I'm not comfortable with a piece, my mind will not drift. I'll be like very hyper aware of that particular piece. So those are some methods I use.
Hey, Davey, why don't you tell the people what they can actively listen to out right now?
Oh, hey. Hey, girl, hey.
Shameless plug,
Hey,
plug.
girl.
Oh, hey.
So look,
I'll lay it down for you, baby.
me and Max, we did this thing, and we call it Disaster Cabinet. So go to the thing that you stream music on, type in Disaster Cabinet, and listen to our album called 2004, The Myth of Origin. It's an EP, it's not an album.
Actively listen to it.
Actively listen to it.
I
Tell,
want a book report on
Yeah,
that.
there's going to be a test later.
transcribe song without a chorus. Good luck.
My favorite.
Thank you. It took me a cool minute.
Yeah.
And that's all we got.
All right. Well, if
Tater tots!
tater tots, indeed.
What you got? How do you know when you got the song down?
Well, you guys did a really good job of like
Sick
summing
dick.
it up.
Hit it.
But
Oh, crushing it. Hodrick, always crushing it.
I was just going to keep this away from you.
I was
Banger's man.
gonna say I like how we wrapped it up, and then you're just like, let's continue the conversation
Got it.
after that.
I want to know. I want to know his answer.
well, I think that the way that I do it can be a little extraneous because I kind of take it to a degree that I think most people don't need to. But
Sure.
yeah, basically, the point at which you really know a piece of music is when you know everybody's part.
Oh, yeah.
Every
Yes, agreed.
single part. When you can, and I say this meaning that you practice this away from your instrument. So it's actually critical that you do not have an instrument in front of you. And so the idea should be
instrument
you should be
distracts you.
able to sing every single part in a song, regardless of who is playing it. And you should also be able to discern every sonority in the song. You should be able to tell what instruments are on the track. If there's percussion, you should be able to hear every piece of it. You should know every single part. Anything. If the keyboard player uses more than one patch over a song, if the guitar player changes, if there are pedals that change during the chorus, all of those things have to be taken into account. And then on top of that, once you've got all of that down, well, for drums, for other instruments, like you have to hear the individual layers of a drum kit too.
Yeah.
Like you should know what's the hi-hat part, what's the kick drum part, what's the snare drum part, all of these things. And then after that, you can kind of stretch that even farther if you want to. If you want to work on like your precision or your ability to hear things in a very layered way,
Yep.
you can try to listen to a song that you know really well and think of different rhythmic cycles over that song and see how well you can maintain maybe a cycle of 5 or 7 over a standard song, just to see how well you can reserve that little bit of brain space left so that you're completely present in the song and know everything that's going on.
Yeah.
And yet you can impose just a little bit more there. Because when you're actually playing with people and you want to add to the situation and you want to be responsive, you need to be able to do that, to know the entirety of the song and have a little bit left in the tank that you can deal with that. Or you could even do something as simple as singing an entire song to yourself with a click and then put the click in a displaced position.
Yeah.
And see if you can sing the entire song to yourself.
Yeah.
Because it's really rare that bands will be together and say, hey, like, let's spend our rehearsal today playing the song we all know super well, and let's see if we can play to a click on the loudspeaker. And if we can do that, let's put it in a weird place and see if we're all on the same page about where we're.
It's my least favorite.
Sometimes I'll have us in Rogue play all of our songs at a practice at like 15 to 20 BPM slower, just to really expose some shit.
Yeah.
And it's fun. I like to do that.
Well, the other
I like
thing
that
is to
more
have
than
a
playing a click to the PA, but
the other
you're a
thing is to have a
caveman.
really clear map in your mind of what the dynamics of the song are.
right.
Yeah.
So if you want to see actual dynamic markings in your head for that, that's really helpful too. But
Right.
that seems to be the thing that people listen to last. And to me, that's something that always gets under my skin is how little importance people put on dynamics for how drastic of an impact it has on a band's
Well, that's that type of shit that goes from that band was really good to that band was great. It's that little psychological difference of you walking out going, they were good, and I got to see them again.
Well, that's the thing that always bugs me when musicians will be like, oh, well, people just don't understand because they're not musicians. And it's like, that just so doesn't fly because, like you said, people won't know why, but they'll go, yeah, it sounded good. But something that you've worked on all that stuff and it builds a complete picture, and you look at the whole mosaic, and then you go, wow, that's fucking awesome. That's great. Wow.
You don't know it, but
Well, it's
you
the
know
reason
it.
it's the reason that I bring it up because so many people are so great about learning material really, really well, and yet you can tell when you play with them, they never took the time to figure out what the dynamics of the tune were.
Right.
And it shows, like you move from section to section and somebody's playing at the same level all the time. Drummers are the worst offenders.
Followed by
to me.
guitarists.
Followed by guitarists.
Yeah.
Followed by harpists.
Yeah. Fucking.
Y'all need to get
Damn
your shit
triangle
together, big
players.
dogs.
Yeah.
Always hitting
Dude,
everything
fucking-
too
They
triangly.
always dime their amps. They're like distortion. They're always
Right?
feedbacking every gig.
Always a big muff on.
Yeah.
They take
Dude,
up the
I
whole
would.
frequency
I
spectrum.
would.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
That's too much.
So.
This is good shit.
Yes.
I like talking about this.
So buttons.
So go listen to Disaster Cabinet.
Disaster
Disaster
Cabinet.
Sing every part.
We want to hear that shit.
Dynamically.
Climb every mountain.
And so, this round table is adjourned.
Hell yeah. Good man.
Goodbye forever.
Goodbye.
Yes.
Sonic City Council was created by Jesse Davidson and Davey Sipes and engineered by Max Taylor at Desert Sound Studio in Palmdale, California. Thank you to Disaster Cabinet for the outro music. Intro music written by Max Taylor. Sonic City Council is produced in association with Amps Music Academy and the Showcase Venue. For more information, visit theshowcasevenue.com.